Hi, and welcome back to the Early Bird Photo News. Great to have you here. Let's jump right into the breaking news this week about the Z8. I've recently read on Nikon rumors that multiple people have issues with the camera strap holder on the Z8 actually coming loose or coming out, and the camera actually falling onto the ground, which is obviously not what we want at all. So if you have a Z8, you might want to be a little bit careful if you're carrying it with a heavier lens on the strap in the field. I don't have any specifics on how it breaks or why it breaks exactly, but the fact that it actually came loose on different camera bodies from different people is definitely a reason for some concern. And I definitely think you should be aware of in the field, and maybe if you're a strap user, you could check from time to time if it feels like it's coming loose, just to make sure your camera just doesn't suddenly crash onto the ground. Personally, I hate camera straps and I would never put any on my camera, so I don't have that issue at all, but I know a lot of people use these straps and love them, so it's definitely something to be aware of. Speaking about being aware of, Nikon is actually aware of this issue as well, and they said that they will fix or check those camera strap holders, those lugs, whenever people will send in their Z8 for the mount issue. However, I'm not quite sure what happens to people who have already sent in their camera or who have a camera who's not affected by the mount issue. So hopefully there will be a little bit more guidance from Nikon to see what can be done to make sure that these strap holders don't come loose and your camera suddenly falls onto the ground. Last week was all about editing some personal projects of mine, like those awesome golden shoulder parrots from the remote Cape York Peninsula that I photographed last year. And I enjoyed editing images so much that this week I just kept going with it and focused on another group of birds, this time cockatoos, and in particular black cockatoos. They are really big, awesome birds. They're actually quite hard to photograph because they usually sit up high in the trees, but sometimes you get lucky and they come down low. Like this bird you can see behind me here on the screen actually landed on a bird bath in an Airbnb we were staying at, and I could get some headshots with the 600mm lens and the 1.4 extender. So I was stoked about that. And editing that photo then got me into looking through some of my older files and finding some more images that I wanted to edit. A lot of them actually taken with my 5D Mark IV and 5D Mark III cameras. So a little bit older files, a little bit more noisy, a little bit harder to edit. But with my masterclass workflow and in my ProSets in particular, I was able to get some really nice results out of those older photos. And of course, the new noise reduction software like DxO Pure, Topaz Denoise, or also Adobe Enhance helped a lot in getting the most out of these slightly older files. One image I liked in particular, which actually was taken with the R5 and the 100 to 500mm lens more recently here on the Sunshine Coast, was of this pair of yellow-tailed black cockatoos that landed on this awesome branch right in front of me when I was following a flock through the forest. The biggest challenge with these photos is that they often have a really strong color cast in the black feathers of the birds. This is something where I love to use selective color again to make sure that the black color is nice and black and not too yellow or too blue or too red, because that can happen quite quickly. Like in this female red-tailed black cockatoo, for example, there was so much sunlight on the wing that it was just too bright and strange. So with a few curve layers, I was able to darken down the wing and balance out all the different sort of light reflections on the bird, giving me a much nicer overall image. So this is the second week in a row now where my two favorite tools in Photoshop are definitely curves and the selective color, because it allows me to individually select certain areas on the bird and then darken these or lighten these or shift the colors around to make sure that the image looks absolutely perfect. And if you want to save time and make your own images look amazing, make sure to check out my masterclass and ProSets down there in the description. I think what will happen over the next few months is that we're going to hear a lot of crazy rumors about the R1 and the R5 Mark II, and most of them will not actually come true. Last week we heard about the EVF in the R1, and this week we're hearing that we might get a bump in the megapixels from 45 to 60 in the R5 Mark II. I'm all for it. If the sensor is fast and reads out really fast, then I'm happy to have a bump in megapixels if it still maintains good noise performance and fantastic details. But otherwise, I would also be happy with the 45 megapixels we already have in the R5, because I think that's kind of the sweet spot at the moment, the 45 to 50 megapixel range. Would you guys agree? There's also been a patent for likely another very expensive Canon lens, a f2 200mm RF lens, which would be fantastic for sports photographers. And I actually have a friend who does a lot of macro photography and butterflies and flowers with a lens like this. So you think it's just a sport lens, but some people actually find creative ways of using a lens like that as well, because it gives you a really nice separation of your subject and the background. Speaking about expensive lenses, there's another expensive lens that Canon seems to have trouble to deliver to people, and that's the new 2.8 100 to 300mm lens. Apparently, it's not available in huge quantities, and that will remain like that for the foreseeable future. I don't know how many people have actually ordered one. Did any of you guys order one? But it seems like that even with, I expect, a rather small amount of lenses ordered, Canon still has trouble delivering all of them, and it will be a few months or longer, sometimes even not this year, before everyone will be able to get their lenses, even if they pre-ordered them already. Speaking about wait times, it also seems like the Nikon Z8 is on a bit of a back order at most camera shops, ranging from 1 week to 3 weeks to 3 months, and how long it will take to actually get your camera. So I think, like with a lot of products, it definitely helps to call up different shops if you want to get a camera quickly. For instance, with my R3 back in the day, many shops had that on back order for months and months, but then I called one certain shop and they actually had one in stock. So sometimes it helps to call like smaller retailers that might get some stock, maybe just 1 or 2 cameras, rather than going with always the biggest stores that might have a really long wait list and it might take longer for you to actually get your gear. Are you ordering a Z8 and have you gotten it already, or are you waiting? Make sure to let me know in the comments. Alongside the A6700 last week, Sony also released an f4 70 to 200mm lens, their second version of that lens, and it looks like an awesome little lens. It's much smaller than its predecessor, and it's an external zoom this time, so it's nice and small, similar-ish to what Canon also has on offer with their 70 to 200mm lens. All in all, it looks like a fantastic lens. The only downside I find with like all 70 to 200mm lenses is always the price. And this is the main reason I still have my only EF lens, a 70 to 200 f2.8 lens, because I always want to upgrade this lens. But whenever I look at the prices of the new RF 70 to 200mm lenses, they are very expensive, and it's not a lens that I use a lot. So for now, I'm sticking with this lens, even though it's very big and heavy, and with the adapter it's also very long, so I'd really like to upgrade. But then at the same time, I'm also not sure would I want to upgrade to the f2.8 version or the f4 version. Usually I like the f4 version because it's so much smaller, but then if I'm filming with it or photographing like people like my daughter or something in the backyard, the f2.8 can be nice to separate the subject from your background. So I'm always torn on what lens to get, and yeah, I'm not quite sure. That's why I still have this lens, but maybe you guys can let me know in the comments which 70 to 200mm lenses do you use? 2.8, f4, and which one should I get? Because eventually I want to upgrade this because it's just too big and too heavy. And on this note, I think it's time to wrap up this week's early bird photo news. It was a rather short video, but I hope I can prevent maybe some of you dropping their Z8 camera onto the ground because that strap holder comes loose. At least you're aware of it now and can hopefully prevent that from happening. Before you go, make sure to check out my other videos and also check out my recently activated channel membership, where you can directly support me in making more videos and get some cool member perks. Also make sure to leave me comments with your thoughts, give me a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button, and I will see you in the next video very soon. Bye guys.